The air was thick with the stench of stale beer and despair. Mia Collins clutched the note tighter, her knuckles bone white against the flimsy paper. Each step echoed in the narrow alley, the sound swallowed by the oppressive silence of the city that had stolen so much from her. The flickering neon sign at the end of the alley cast grotesque shadows that danced around her feet. She was stepping into the unknown, a place where secrets whispered and shadows held their breath. The note had been cryptic, almost taunting in its simplicity. A single sentence scrawled across cheap paper. Midnight. The Blue Moon Diner. Come alone if you want the truth. The truth. It was a double-edged sword, promising both solace and pain. The truth about her brother's death. The truth they had so carelessly buried under the guise of a random act of violence. Liam, her brother, her protector, her confidant, gone, ripped away by a senseless act, or so they said. The police had been quick to label it a robbery gone wrong, closing the case with an air of finality that left Mia reeling. But a sister knows. A sister feels the undercurrents, the dissonance in the official narrative. Liam had been murdered, and Mia would find out why. The diner was a relic of a bygone era, its faded glory clinging desperately to a time when hope was not a luxury. The air inside was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and stale grease. Mia slid into the cracked vinyl booth, her eyes scanning the room, her hand instinctively reaching for the small blade she had tucked into her boot. Trust was a dangerous game, especially in the shadows. A man sat across from her, shrouded in the dim light. His face was a roadmap of hard living, etched with lines that spoke of too many secrets and too little sleep. He didn't offer his name, and she didn't ask. In this dance of shadows, anonymity was the only currency that mattered. You wanted the truth about your brother, the man rasped, his voice roughened by cigarettes and time. Liam was a good man. Too good for his own good. He pushed a worn envelope across the table, his eyes holding hers with a gaze that was both weary and knowing. He stumbled upon something he shouldn't have, something dangerous. Mia's fingers trembled as she took the envelope. Inside she found photographs, police reports, and a name whispered like a curse, Victor Duran. Duran was a powerful man. His fingers sunk deep into the city's underbelly. He ran a nightclub, a glittering facade for his real business trafficking. Liam, it seemed, had discovered Duran's secret, and it had cost him his life. The photos were like shards of glass piercing Mia's heart. Images of Liam, his face frozen in a silent scream, his body broken and discarded. The police reports were just as damning, detailing witness accounts that had been conveniently overlooked. Witnesses who had seen Duran's men leaving Liam's apartment the night he died. Why? Mia whispered, her voice raw with grief and rage. Why would Duran do this? The informant's gaze softened, a flicker of sympathy in his hardened eyes. Duran is a viper, he said, his voice low and dangerous. He crushes anyone who threatens his empire. Liam got too close. He paid the price. He leaned closer, his words a venomous whisper in the stale air. The police won't do anything. Duran owns them. If you want justice, you'll have to get it yourself. Justice. The word echoed in Mia's mind, a hollow promise in a world that had lost its meaning. She looked at the photos again, at Liam's lifeless eyes staring back at her. Something shifted inside her, a quiet steeling of resolve. The police had failed her brother. The system had failed him. But she wouldn't. She would become her brother's avenger. She would become justice itself. Days turned into nights, each one an agonizing reminder of her promise. Mia studied the files, memorizing every detail, every lie, every injustice. She learned about Duran's empire, his weaknesses, his vulnerabilities. She trained, honing her body into a weapon, her grief fueling her every move. The police wouldn't help her. They were blind, bought and paid for by Duran's blood money. No, Mia would have to be judge, jury, and executioner. The thought sent a chill down her spine, but she didn't flinch. This wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about justice. Cold, hard, and unforgiving. She infiltrated Duran's world slowly, carefully. She learned to move like a shadow, to disappear into the background. She befriended his men, playing the role of a lost soul, desperate for a way out. All the while she was gathering information, plotting her move. The nightclub was Duran's fortress, a glittering cage where he held court. Mia knew she couldn't just walk in and kill him. He was too well guarded, too powerful. She needed a plan, something that would draw him out, make him vulnerable. She needed to become the predator, not the prey. The transformation was subtle but profound. Gone was the grieving sister, her eyes clouded with sorrow. In her place stood a woman of steel, her gaze sharp and unwavering. She traded her jeans and t-shirts for elegant dresses, her movements a study in controlled grace. She became a phantom, flitting through Duran's world, always watching, always waiting. She learned the rhythms of the nightclub, the ebb and flow of power. She watched Duran, studying his habits, his weaknesses. He was a creature of routine, arrogant in his power, blind to the shadows gathering around him. Mia cultivated an air of mystery, playing the role of a woman with secrets. She dropped hints, planted rumors, weaving a web of intrigue that ensnared Duran's attention. He was drawn to her, intrigued by the darkness he sensed in her eyes, a darkness that mirrored his own. The air in the nightclub was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and broken promises. Music pulsed through the room, a throbbing beat that echoed the frantic rhythm of Mia's heart. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her eyes constantly scanning, her hand never straying far from the small pistol concealed beneath her dress. She had lured Duran to his private lounge, a gilded cage overlooking the dance floor. He was waiting for her, a predatory gleam in his eyes. He thought she was just another conquest, another trophy to add to his collection. He had no idea he was staring death in the face. "You intrigue me," Duran said, his voice a low purr. He gestured to the plush sofa, his eyes lingering on her every move. Mia smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of her lips. "The feeling is mutual," she said, her voice smooth as silk. She took a seat, her back straight, her gaze never leaving his. The moment stretched, taut with unspoken tension. The music seemed to fade, the crowd a distant blur. It was just the two of them, predator and prey, locked in a deadly game of cat and mouse. "You know," Mia said, her voice barely a whisper, "I have a brother, Liam." Duran's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something cold and calculating passing over his face. He took a sip of his drink, his movements deliberate, controlled. He thought he was in control. He was wrong. "A shame what happened to him," Duran said, his voice smooth, devoid of emotion. "A robbery," they said. "They lied," Mia said, her voice hardening. She leaned forward, her eyes boring into his. "You killed him." The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with accusation. Duran laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You're mistaken, little one," he said, his voice laced with amusement. "I wouldn't waste my time on such trivialities." "No?" Mia said, her voice dangerously low. "But you would kill a man for getting too close to the truth? For threatening your precious empire?" Duran's smile vanished. He set down his glass with a thud, his eyes hardening. "You should learn to mind your own business," he said, his voice laced with threat. "Some things are best left buried." "Liam deserved justice," Mia said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. She stood up, her movements fluid, predatory. "And you? You will pay for what you did." Duran rose to his feet, his face contorted in a mask of rage. "You're playing a dangerous game, little girl," he snarled. "A game you can't win." Mia laughed, a hollow, humorless sound. "It's over, Duran," she said, her hand reaching beneath her dress. "You lose." The gunshot echoed through the room, a sharp, deafening crack that silenced the music and sent the crowd scattering in terror. Duran staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief, a crimson stain blooming on his silk shirt. He stared at her, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. He reached out a hand, as if to stop her, but it was too late. The life drained from his eyes, and he crumpled to the floor, a lifeless heap at her feet. The chaos swirled around her, but Mia barely noticed. She stood frozen, the gun still smoking in her hand, her ears ringing with the echo of the gunshot. The scent of gunpowder filled the air, acrid and final. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. She watched as Duran's blood seeped into the plush carpet, a grotesque parody of a crimson tide. A strange sense of detachment washed over her, a calmness she had never known before. It was over. Liam had his justice. She holstered the gun, her movements precise, automatic. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind, but the reality was surreal, dreamlike. She had taken a life, but in doing so, she had honored another. She melted back into the panicked crowd, becoming one face among many. No one looked at her twice. She was a ghost, invisible in the chaos she had created. She slipped out of the nightclub and into the night, the shadows welcoming her back into their embrace.